This is Pan-African Morning. We continue with our news now. We take a look at international stories. One of Europe's poorest countries, Ukraine, has found itself at the back of the continent's vaccine queue, slower to procure them independently and unwilling to buy from Russia, while publicly cajoling the European Union for supplies for its 41 million people.
While vaccinations against the coronavirus gather pace across Europe, doctors at Kiev's City Clinical Hospital 17 are still waiting. In the COVID emergency ward, 3 patients lie quietly on beds, breathing through ventilators. Sergei Dubrov is the head of the COVID department.
I don't know all the details about the negotiations and all vaccine procurement procedures, but I can say as a simple doctor and as a Ukrainian citizen that I don't think that Ukraine did a great job. Why? Because many countries and our neighbours between them already have the vaccine and started vaccinations, but we didn't. The goal is to get the vaccine in Ukraine. I don't know what the means are to reach it, but I think we should have got it together with Poland or our other neighbours.
One of Europe's poorest countries, Ukraine, has found itself at the back of the continent's vaccine queue. Slower to procure them independently and unwilling to buy vaccines from Russia. President Volodymyr Zelensky has appealed to the leaders of EU countries for help, while conceding that this is very unpleasant to feel that you are standing there with your hand out. The EU, while embroiled in its own problems to secure supplies, said it was willing to help, which it has done so far by funding the global COVAX scheme, supplying COVID vaccines to poorer countries, including Ukraine. Health Minister Maxim Stepanov is hopeful that EU negotiations will be successful.
Ми в тому числі зверталися неодноразово до Європейського Союзу щодо
We asked the European Union several times to give Ukraine a certain quota of the vaccine. We didn't ask them to give it to us for free. We were ready to pay the same price as other European countries. Moreover, we were ready to pay even more to save the lives of Ukrainian citizens.
Думаю, що заради життя і здоров'я українців ми готові були сплачувати і більше.
Ukraine plans to vaccinate 14.4 million people this year, starting from February, when it expects 117,000 Pfizer-BioNTech doses through COVAX. It will also procure Chinese vaccines. But progress could be slow. Ukraine and neighbour Moldova are the only countries in Europe likely to take until 2023 to reach widespread COVID vaccinations, according to a report by the Economist Intelligence Unit. With relations between Kiev and Moscow still toxic after Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, Ukraine banned the use of Russian COVID vaccines. That left Ukraine behind neighbours like Belarus, the first country outside Russia to register the Sputnik V vaccine. Russian vaccines have also reached regions of eastern Ukraine, controlled by Moscow-backed separatists.
Well, President Joe Biden has ordered a review of asylum processing at the United States-Mexico border and the immigration system as he seeks to undo some of former President Donald Trump's hardline policies. Take a look.
He removed the stain on our reputation.
With the stroke of his pen on Tuesday, President Joe Biden began the difficult process of rolling back some of former President Donald Trump's most controversial immigration policies, signing 3 executive orders, including one aimed at reuniting migrant children separated from their families.
We're going to work to undo the moral and national shame of the previous administration that literally, not figuratively, ripped children from the arms of their families, their mothers and fathers at the border.
From the Oval Office, Biden also ordered a review of asylum processing at the U.S.-Mexico border and the immigration system. Less than 2 weeks on the job, Biden has faced some criticism for the dozens of executive actions he's signed.
There's a lot of talk, with good reason, about the number of executive orders that I have signed. I'm not making new law. I'm eliminating bad policy.
Immigration advocates have urged the new Democratic administration to move quickly. But Biden aides say they need time to unravel layers of Trump-era immigration restrictions to put in place new, more migrant-friendly systems. As part of the actions on Tuesday, Biden will mandate a review of the Migrant Protection Protocols, a program that pushed 65,000 asylum seekers to Mexico to wait for U.S. court hearings. Biden's strategy is a cautious one. He's reversing hardline Trump policies while simultaneously trying to prevent a surge in illegal immigration. In a sign of his careful approach, Biden did not address repealing a Trump order known as Title 42. The coronavirus-era order issued under Trump allows U.S. authorities to expel almost all migrants caught crossing the border illegally.
And that's it for international stories. We come back home and take a look at our local stories now. A recap of some of them. African National Congress Secretary General Ace Magashule having dodged some questions about the party's position on Jacob Zuma's decision to snub the Concourt's order to appear before the Zondo Commission. Magashule says Zuma is a human being with his own beliefs and he cannot speak on his behalf. Asked why the ANC has not called Zuma into order, Magashule asked, what has Zuma done wrong? And that would push the ANC to call him into order. Magashule says Zuma has rights as a citizen of South Africa. He's
saying he leaves Comrade Zuma, President Zuma alone. Just leave him. What is the problem? What has Zuma done now?
So is it okay for a former president to defy the Constitution of the Republic and the Concord?
No, President Zuma is President Zuma. So I can't talk on behalf of President Zuma.
The ANC's reaction is you to a former leader of the ANC doing this.
President Zuma is a South African. He has his own rights. So you can't want me to talk on behalf of President Zuma.
But you're the ANC. There are calls now for him to be suspended. Will the ANC entertain that?
No. Why? Why should we suspend a person who believes in what he believes in?
So it's fine for former President Zuma to believe that it's correct to defy the Concord and to basically turn your back on the Constitution?
On two questions. I see
no, President Zuma has a right to do whatever he wants to do. So don't make me talk on behalf of President Zuma. We have not discussed this matter. So I don't see what is the issue.
Okay, let me just.
Well, Magashule further added that he does not see anything wrong with what Zuma has done. He said, there are many things wrong in South Africa at present day, and one day they will talk for everyone to hear.
I will express them at the right time.
As the ANC SG, are you not concerned of the former president basically defying the Constitution and the Constitution?
President Zuma is President Zuma. I am Ace Magashule, Secretary General. I respect Comrade Zuma.
Thank you.
Do you feel he was targeted by the Constitutional Court as well?
Well, let's talk about...
When he compares him to the party government,
let's talk. We will one day talk about what is happening in South Africa. That's what I can tell you. There are many wrong things which are happening in this country today. Yeah. We can go to the days of TRC where Botha refused to go to the TRCs and nobody said anything. No, it's not a standard. It's not a standard.
Is Botha's behavior the standard?
No, it's not a standard. You, the media, did not say anything until today. There are TRC prosecutions which are supposed to have happened. They are supposed to happen. They are not happening. You are quiet about that. People who killed us, maimed us during the days of apartheid.
So as Mr. Magashule, the Secretary General of the ANC, you are okay with the former President of the Republic defying the Concord and the Constitution?
I'm not okay with Zuma defying. I'm saying Comrade Zuma, President, is President Zuma. He has his own views and he has his own rights.
Then why don't you call him to order?
Why should I call him to order? What has he done?
So he's done nothing wrong with defying?
I don't see anything wrong.
Oh, it's just 15 minutes before we hit the top of the hour, and with that we'll take a short breather. Thereafter we'll be back with Professor Barry Hanyani to help us analyse some of our big stories here on Pan-African Morning. Do stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Anger boils over in El Dorado Park.
Make massive moves.
Corruption allegations have hit too close to the office of the president.
America is crying out for leadership.
I'm the president and you're fake news.
Donald Trump has already started his attacks.
It is clear from the development of the disease.
It is still the biggest annual decline in 100 years.
Make massive moves with Starsat.
This is just the beginning.
Make massive moves.
Get out! Get out of this place!
I love you. Do you love me?
Yes.
I like this. Someone stole from me yesterday. It was not my fault now. Eh?
Leave me alone. Blast your head.
No, don't shoot, sir, please.
Please don't kill us. I'll give you anything you want.
Make massive moves with Starsat.
Allen has the chain.
Make massive moves.
Oh my God!
And WBC Continental Americas champion.
That was delightful.
Make massive moves with Starsat.
Welcome back to the program, Pan-African Morning. Check your time with hours just a few minutes before we hit the top of the hour. I'm your host, AUDREY CHIMWANDA-THWALA. Just before the break, I promised you, we have Professor Barry Hanyani joining us to help us analyze some of our top stories here on the program. You know the old saying that there are no permanent enemies, but permanent interests when it comes to politics. The issue of former President Jacob Zuma and the CIC Julius Malema is one that has a lot of people's tongues wagging. Very good morning to you, Prof. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Audrey, and a pleasant one to your viewers as well.
Let's get straight to it. Should this meeting, should it happen between Julius Malema and Jacob Zuma, should it be celebrated?
Well, it's difficult to say, isn't it? I like your opening pun there to say perhaps in politics there are no permanent enemies. Could this be one of those experiments that we're likely to see? We'll have to wait and see. But at the same time, it tells us that those who were in power and perhaps are currently in power will always have something under their sleeves. And what is that something that is so covered in some kind of secrecy veil remains to be seen. And the intriguing part is that it puts you guys in the world of media to whet your appetite, as it were, to really find out how is this possible after such a raucous past 6 to 8 years where the two became public foes and suddenly they are causing to one another. What is it that binds these two suddenly?
Well, some would argue that perhaps this is a move by former President Jacob Zuma to move this fight that it seems to be embroiled in outside of the courts, of the legal system, into the political arena where perhaps he feels more emboldened?
Well, provided his influence is still there. Let's not forget, he's not in government anymore. And in other quarters, he might be seen as a retired politician, quote unquote. He's no longer in the proximity of power, but rightly so, there are loyal individuals in government and in the party itself, the ANC, who perhaps would want to salvage whatever is left of his political career. Let's not forget, age is not by his side as well. He might present himself as a competent, fit person, but there are certain things that I suspect he might be unable to do. Crisscrossing the country, meeting other comrades, engaging in whatever physical political activities and so forth. So it's interesting to see to what degree are we likely to see the Zuma factor reinventing itself within the current political landscape.
And just looking at, Julius Malema and, the words that he used, that it's important for us to meet for the good of our country. Just the optics of it, with different political parties wanting to come together for the good of the country. I mean, what do you read into that? Is it really his motive to see former President Jacob Zuma perhaps not be seen as a constitutional delinquent, as he once called him, and to reel him in and perhaps to save him, so to speak?
Yeah, it plays to a number of narratives, Audrey. I think one of those, which is a chief consideration, is that the public should always put the trust towards politicians with a pinch of salt, given the fact that today they present this animosity, as it were, but tomorrow these are people who dine together. If I may stretch this analysis a little bit, one cannot throw away the possibility that Julius Malema might be cozy with the current Ekurhuleni mayor, Mr. Masina, and on the other hand, people like Zizi Kodwa and other diehard ANC members of his age and group. And we should not read too much when people debate and go for each other's throats, because rightly so, they spend time socially together, they go out for gala dinners and so forth. So perhaps it's the exploitation of that space that says, after all, we are human beings, we are citizens, we are politicians, and we are representatives of our individual constituencies. Whatever divides us, be it ideologically or otherwise, it is perhaps that can be used as a glue to put us together where there's common issues that can be shared and exploited to the benefit of those that we represent.
Absolutely. Fast forward, should Zuma then not appear the Zondo Commission, as the statement that came out from the Jacob Zuma Foundation alludes to? Remember, this is not perhaps a legal response, a formal legal response, because I would assume that, as lawyers, they respond to each other in a formal legal way with the Commission and his lawyers. Should it then turn out that it doesn't appear, this could be seismic in terms of, the political body of South Africa, don't you think? And if so, in what way?
Well, for starters, I hope it doesn't come close to putting the country in some form of constitutional crisis. Rightly so, you have the apex court, the Constitutional Court, having pronounced itself upon this matter to say the former president ought to appear before the commission for the sake of good governance, for the sake of observing whatever democratic as well as constitutional imperatives that must be ensured. Issues of transparency, of accountability, but more so the rule of law. So anything that is contrary to this expectation would then cast doubt as to whether our judiciary system is robust, it can withstand tests of this nature, and going forward, it will then begin to unravel other related areas, such as are we ready to govern as a country, are we ready to ensure that, rightly so, issues of social justice to cover both sides out of fairness are actually observed. It's not necessarily about Zuma's rights here, but also the workings of the commission as proclaimed during his tenure to make sure that in the end the taxpayers are able to accrue the benefits as set out in its establishment.
Quite a litmus test there for the judiciary system of South Africa. You're absolutely right. Professor Hanyana, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time and your insights. We'll take a very short break. We're hitting the top of the hour here on Pan-African Morning. We'll be back on the other side with the recap of our top stories internationally and regionally, as I take a look at stories from the African continent as well. Do stay with us. Good morning.
Make massive moves.
Picture perfect, you don't need no filter. Another one. Jerusalem,
Make massive moves with Starsat. Make massive moves.
Bible is human and divine.
It's important for us to remember.
And I'm part of God's story.
God is healing you.
God says what he means, and he means what he says. God is good.
I am very grateful to God. I am healed. Amen.
Make massive moves with Starsat.
This is just the beginning.
Make massive moves.
Get out! Get out of this place!
I love you. Do you love me?
Yes. I like this.
Someone stole from me yesterday.
It was not my fault now.
Eh? Leave me alone. Blast your head.
No, don't shoot, sir, please. Please don't kill us. I'll give you anything you want.
Make massive moves with Starsat. Make massive moves.
How can you say that?
That is what it is.
Your mother eloped with someone else.
I just think this is such a genius idea. I think it's amazing.
I can be happy.
It's inside you. It's inside of all of us.
It's about cooking smart that are nutritious and delicious.
President Trump acknowledging the coronavirus death toll could be significantly higher.
We don't want to do this.
There is nothing you can take.
Surviving roommates scared.
The heavyweights arrive.
Inside, finds Pachulia, blocked by Jane.
This is the will of God.
Make massive moves with Starsat. Make massive moves.
Picture perfect, you don't need no filter.
Another one.
Make massive moves with Starsat.
I want you to eat healthy food because it's delicious.
Make massive moves.
Would you like another one?
I love it. I love this soup. This is amazing. The grits are so creamy. Oh,
I take pride in my grits.
so flavorful.
I think that looks wonderful.
Yeah.
It's so incredible.
Make massive moves with Starsat.
Anger boils over in El Dorado Pond.
Make massive moves.
Corruption allegations have hit too close to the office of the president.
America is crying out for leadership.
I'm the president and you're fake news.
Donald Trump has already started his attacks.
It is clear from the development of the disease.
But it's still the biggest annual decline in 100 years.
Make massive moves with Starsat.
This is just the beginning.
Make massive moves.
Get out! Get out of this place!
I love you. Do you love me?
Yes. I like this.
Someone stole from me yesterday.
It was not my fault now.
Eh?
Leave me alone. Blast your head.
No, don't shoot, sir, please. Please don't kill us. I'll give you anything you want.
Make massive moves with Starsat.
Outlet pass to Jane.
Make massive moves.
Oh my God! And WBC Continental America's champion. That was delightful.
Make massive moves with Starsat. Make massive moves
I feel confident. I feel like I can take on the world.
So you're telling a story through your clothes.
Such a professional, you wouldn't even know.
Criticism is one of my biggest motivations.
Darling, you want to be a model? Like, oh my God.
I'm glistening.
The fashion industry needs people with beautiful faces. I would pay thousands of dollars for that look.
Make massive moves with Starsat.
Well, it's 8 o'clock Central African time. This is Pan-African Morning. Thank you for being with us. We're happy that we're still in your company. Go ahead and engage us on our social media platforms at some of the top stories that we're discussing here today. This morning, would like to speak about a courageous woman, Rebecca Kotane, who passed away recently. We'll get more into the details and the legacy in a few minutes with the SACP Deputy Secretary Solima Paila, who will be joining us in just a few minutes. For now, though, we begin with a recap of our headlines, where the African National Congress appears to be quiet on the Jacob Zuma saga. Police Minister Bheki Cele unhappy with the police and what happened in Cape Town with the SASSA grant beneficiaries as they were standing in a queue that got hosed down by the police there. He wants answers.
There are two reasons. It's perception, or correctly or incorrectly, that has been created by
Julius
our
Malema
own
requested he visit to Jacob Zuma.
The South African police, especially two compared issues, the Belleville,
Greyhound shuts doors after 37 years
the
of service.
The pensioners, the disabled people, and how we dealt with the issue of Musenberg. So that has caused really some problem for us being called to explain. So just one came here to find out why did we approach these two incidents differently. Fully agree that we should not have done what we did at Belleville.
Shame. But if you tell me I can reach it next time, I just...
people, vulnerable people, to use the methods that we are supposed to have used on the rioting people, using water cannons and all that. But also, correctly or incorrectly, we should not have approached the same issue of Musenberg.
On to other news now. One of our top stories here on Pan-African Morning. We would like to speak about a very courageous woman, one who has been described as selfless, brave, and a freedom fighter. She recently passed away. I'm talking about Rebecca Kotane. She passed away just before her 109th birthday, if you can believe it. And to help us, just reflect on a legacy is none other than Ntate Solima Paila. He is the Deputy Secretary of the South African Communist Party. Very good morning to you, Mr. Mapaila. Thank you for joining us under very sad circumstances, of course.
Good morning, Audrey, and to our viewers. Yes, indeed, it's quite sad that we lost such a great woman and revolutionary who contributed immensely in the liberation of our country, quite courageous, as you said, from a young age when she participated in the liberation struggle against the apartheid regime, fighting for the freedoms of our people, leading to a role in the mobilization for the Freedom Charter that became an important document that harnessed the views of all South Africans about what kind of South Africa they want. And she played a prominent role in that regard. And of course, meeting Comrade Moses Kotane, that she married, who was the longest serving General Secretary of the Communist Party, invited more harassment from the police of the apartheid regime at the time. But he withstood all of that and stood courageous and continued to contribute immensely to the liberation of our people.
Having lost her husband in 1963, I believe, as I was just doing my research, I mean, just really courageous stuff. Why do you think she remained so resolute? Of course, she was a stalwart in her own right, but also being the wife of the late former SACP General Secretary.
Well, you remember that since 1963 until his death in 1978, Comrade Moses Kotane, they could not meet. because in many instances the apartheid regime frustrated their attempts to travel to see him. But as you know, her children, she then managed to send her children out because she also used her house as a hub to organize underground activities together with her comrades in the ANC, in the Communist Party, and all the underground structures in the trade unions. She managed to get her children out as well into exile, and that's where they also were able to freely see their father. But she could not be allowed on numerous occasions. In fact, at one point in time, the apartheid regime wanted her to divorce Comrade Moses Kotane, and they promised her many things, mansions and everything else, good life. She rejected that, and as a consequence, they intensified the harassment. Arriving midnight to just search and say, we hear Moses Kotane is here, where are your children? And all of those things. Of course, many other liberation heroes and heroines at the time, their families were visited and harassed constantly. But with her case, denied even the possibility to travel across the country was something that had a huge impact on her, particularly when most of her children were now outside the country. And she was left with some of the women, daughters inside. And that was quite sad. As you know, in South Africa, at the time particularly, the fatherly figures were critical in the household. She had no boys to send to anything, but she took solace on her grandchildren and other family members, of course, the role of her own comrades in the underground network. But she continues to make her house a place where those who were to connect with the movement outside will arrive and be taken care of, and then they will be able to leave the country safely.
Yes, and you bring another salient point there. Having stayed in Diepkloof, Soweto, I understand somebody who, as you bring to light some of the things that happened in the past, that she's somebody who was asked to divorce her husband, promised a big house by the apartheid government, I suppose in a strategy to try and divide and conquer, divide families and separate them as part of their strategy as the apartheid government. Surely there's a lesson to be learned there in how she lived her life.
Yes, quite important. The women at the time, particularly liberation women, they taught themselves self-reliance. I mean, she was part of an important network with Mama Lilian Ngoyi, Mas Chaba or Mas Diba, that was quite prominent and the leader of the ANC Women's League and the first woman to be elected into the NEC of the African National Congress. They were in the same network. Mamu Albertina Sisulu, Mamu Mutwaledi, whose husband was in Robben Island, and Mamu Kwai, whose also husband was in Robben Island, part of the Rivonia trialists. As you know, Mamu Kwai, for instance, confirmed a marriage to her husband when he was in prison. So these women, despite the attempts to separate them from their partners, they rejected that. Instead, they showed love and commitment even to their husband when they were in prison. And majority of them became an example of how to be resilient. But women then took more responsibility for the harassment as well as for looking after children, for the household, because the husband, like in this case, Comrade Kotane, was outside. Then she had to see to finish how a family continued to survive, including how she has to take care of the entirety of the household, even when the apartheid regime were harassing her and refusing her to actually have appropriate employment.
Yes, and as we continue to appreciate her sacrifices and enormous contribution that she made, to the struggle for liberation, of course, we owe her and a generation a debt of gratitude that we perhaps can never be able to repay. What is the best way to honor her memory going forward?
I think the greatest monument for women like her is the society to change their approach to women, to treat women with dignity, to treat women equally, to change power relations that are different between men and women, which are unequal, basically to attack the core of inequality between men and women, which is patriarchy, and have a society that should not see the gender lenses when they adjudicate on common things on a daily basis, and appreciate that women have done, in fact, more than men in the contribution of our liberation struggle. Of course, in a patriarchal society, even the work that is done by women is credited to men, or is taken over by men. So the best tribute to her will be a monument of all South African men behaving good towards women.
Wonderfully said, Mr. Mapela. Any news or update? I know it's perhaps a bit too soon with regards to when she will be laid to rest, memorial arrangements, and such alike.
There is a memorial today in Diepkloof in a community, of course, under COVID-19 conditions. And later on, she will be buried this Saturday in Pella in the northwest, where her husband, Moses Kotane, was buried.
Well, thank you for those very important details and for sharing that with not only us but our viewers as well, Mr. Mapela of the SACP there, helping us get some insight into the late of Umama Rebecca Kotane, who recently passed away just before she turned 109 years old, a freedom fighter, selfless Kader in her own right. We'll have to leave it there for now. Have a good morning, Mr. Mapela. We'll speak up very soon once again. We'll take a short break. Thereafter, we'll be back with more news and updates.
Make massive moves.
Picture perfect, you don't need no filter.
Another one.
Jerusalem,
Make massive moves with Starsat. Make massive moves.
Bible is human and divine.
It's important for us to remember.
And I'm part of God's story.
Yeah, mama, hey.
God is healing you.
God says what he means, and he means what he says. God is good.
I am very grateful to God. I am healed. Amen.
Make massive moves with Starsat.
This is just the beginning.
Make massive moves.
Get out! Get out of this place!
I love you. Do you love me?
Yes.
I like this. Someone stole from me yesterday.
It was not my fault now.
Leave me or I blast your head. No, don't shoot, sir, please. Please don't kill us. I'll give you anything you want.
Make massive moves with Starsat.
We continue with our news and updates here on Pan-African Morning. Just before we end the program, we'll have a recap of our top stories once again if you have just joined us. As part of eliminating fears about the safety of COVID-19 vaccine, South African government has taken an initiative to explain to citizens how the vaccine works in the body. Now, there has been rising concerns on the safety of the vaccine, with conspiracy theories that are fueling rumors that the vaccine could be deadly. Take a listen to this.
The vaccine mimics, or in other words, it tries to do the same thing that the ordinary infection would do. In other words, we're getting bits of the virus which stimulate the immune system. In other words, that system which protects you against infection and also aids in your recovery. And it tends to do the same thing as the actual infection would do. But instead of using the virus which causes the disease, what we do is that we either take parts of the virus or we actually change the virus so it doesn't cause disease, but still stimulates the immune system.
Well, many doctors and patients have said that they will use the much spoken about yet unproven to be curing COVID-19 drug. It is called ivermectin. The drug is said to be helpful to those who have COVID-19. However, experts say there is no empirical evidence at the moment and cannot recommend the usage of it. Professor Salim Abdul Karim says the evidence on this drug is flimsy and there is no compelling evidence for it to be used.
Good evening, Kathy, and good evening to all of the viewers. Yes, when one looks at the evidence for ivermectin as a therapeutic for COVID-19, the evidence comprises several research studies, many of which have been done so poorly that they can't really be interpreted. Some indicate benefit, others don't. So at this stage, we don't have any realistic or sufficient evidence to recommend ivermectin be used for treatment. However, that's no reason why individual doctors and patients shouldn't be able to access medication. We do that for many medications that are not proven yet, but it's done on an individual named basis. So that is a Section 1 allowance, Section 21 allowance that the regulator has. And that applies for patients with cancer who need life-saving treatments. And so too, it should apply to ivermectin. That doesn't mean to say ivermectin works or that there is sufficient evidence for it. It's just on a compassionate basis.
This current ruling
is actually quite a constructive one in that it will enable patients to access the treatment, given that the process of waiting for approvals takes quite a bit of time. And in the case that we're dealing with...
Well, the Police Minister, Bheki Cele, has responded and reacted to the police that he says dropped the ball in its handling of pensioners that are queuing at his SASSA office, as opposed to those who broke down regulation, rules and laws by protesting on a beach. Cele says no one should be treated differently in this country. Those who were water canoed outside of the SASSA offices were poor and vulnerable, and officers should have looked at the situation and worked with those on the scene. He said police really dropped the ball. He added that action should be taken against the officers should it be found necessary.
There are two reasons. Is perception, or correctly or incorrectly, that has been created by our own behavior as the members of the South African Police, especially two combat issues, the Belleville, how we behave dealing with grand people, the pensioners, disabled people, and how we dealt with the issue of Muizenberg. So that has caused really some problem for us being called to explain. So just one came here to find out why did we approach these two incidents differently. Fully agree that we should not have done what we did at Belleville with the elderly people, poor people, vulnerable people, to use the methods that we are supposed to have used on the rioting people, using water cannons and all that. But also, correctly or incorrectly, we should not have approached the same issue of Muizenberg the way we did when people, they break the law. There are regulations that they should have been followed. For that reason, Deputy National Commissioner, Deputy Minister, and myself were here. We have called a further explanation from the province so that we are able to know, did anybody do anything wrong, and then we take action.
Well, Cele said that the report that he got on Muizenberg matter will need to be explained further, stating that he was told that there were legal hindrances. However, he still attains that the behavior of the police was inappropriate. Cele says there will be further investigations on the matter, including the recent criminal activities in Cape Town.
Provincial command. We spoke with the provincial command to give the explanation. I must say that some explanation needs a further explanation. Hence, one has requested a full written report back from the management here. We'll be working with the Office of the Minister to clarify those things they call they were legal issues for them not to act at Muizenberg as they did act at Belleville. But there is an acknowledgement to say the Belleville kind of response of the police was inappropriate, should not have happened. Police should have acted otherwise. So for now, that will continue. But there were other things that we spoke about. There's been quite a criminality here in Western Cape with the shooting at this station precincts where we are, where 6 people were killed, 1 is still in hospital. It looks like 2 more people have been shot and killed after those people were killed. There is a suspicion. It remains a suspicion that the second shooting could be a retaliation of the first shooting. Nobody has been arrested here, but we're not very far.
In Pan Business now, after nearly 40 years of service in South Africa, Greyhound Cityliner will be shutting down business. The bus company announced on Wednesday that the last trips will be on the 14th of February this year, and all trips that are booked after have been cancelled and customers will be refunded. The company did not say what led to it having to make the decision to close business. The Grootdry Dam, just outside of Standerton in Mpumalanga, reached 108% at the end of day on Wednesday. Now, the rise in dam levels means good news for the Standerton community, of course, as in 2019 the municipality reported 7 million rand lost due to insufficient water supply measures. Numerous areas in Mpumalanga province have faced difficulties when it comes to water supply following dry seasons in the past few years. Economic Freedom Fighters leader Julius Malema got Twitter talking yesterday as he requested a tea visit to the former president Jacob Zuma. Malema's request comes as a shock to many, as Malema often criticized Zuma harshly when he was still president. Responding to Malema's request, Jacob Zuma said in a tweet, and I quote, "Tobela Mushabi, I have seen your request to share a cup of tea. As you know, Nkandla village is home for me. That is where my time is spent these days. Tea I have plenty of, and you're more than welcome over for a cup." It remains unclear as to what led Malema to make the request. Almost all people previously infected with COVID-19 have high levels of antibodies for at least 6 months. They are likely to protect them from reinfection with the disease. Results of a major UK study show that measures levels of previous COVID-19 infection in populations across Britain, as well as how long antibodies persist in those infected, should provide some kind of reassurance that swift cases of reinfection will then be rare. Among participants who had tested positive for previous COVID-19 infection, 99% retained antibodies to the SARS-CoV-19 for 3 months at least. After the full 6 months of follow-up in the study, 88% still had the antibodies. The findings were also consistent with results of other studies in the United Kingdom and in Iceland, which found that antibodies to the coronavirus tend to persist for several months in those who have had the disease and recovered.
High levels of antibodies have been found in almost all people infected with COVID-19 for at least 6 months, according to a major UK study. The results showed that 99% of participants retained antibodies for 3 months and 88% still had them after 6 months. Scientists say the results should provide some reassurance that swift cases of reinfection will be rare. Naomi Allen, a professor and chief scientist at UK Biobank who conducted the study, said that although we cannot be certain how this relates to immunity, the results suggest that people may be protected against subsequent infection for at least 6 months following natural infection. On Wednesday, a preprint study showed that just 1 shot of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine provided sustained protection for 3 months. It showed a 76% efficacy until a second shot was given, and higher efficacy if the second dose was given at least 12 weeks after the first.
Now that is really good news.
Health Secretary Matt Hancock used this to defend the country's vaccine rollout strategy. Britain has extended the gap between doses and given the shot to people of all ages. whereas France, Belgium and Germany recommend that Oxford's vaccine is only given to under 65s. Director of the Oxford Vaccine.
Well, that's a wrap for Pan-African Morning today. Thank you for watching the program and being in our company in the last 2 hours. We certainly appreciate it. We're back tomorrow, same time, same place. And breaking news, tomorrow is Friday. We've made it to the end of the weekend. We'll be back here and with myself, AUDREY, CHIMWANDA-THWALA, and the amazing crew behind the scenes that make it possible for us to bring you this show every day. Remember to be kind to one another. And of course, Harmony Mbele is up next. So do stay tuned to Galaxy Universal Network.